work to defend America's health, security, and freedom. The rule includes 5 pieces of landmark legislation, which the gentleman, Mr. Morelli, has very clearly explained. I thank him and Mr. McGovern again for their skilled leadership in assembling this rule and steering this crucial legislation to the floor. First this week, we'll have our version of NDAA, which you explained. It supports our nation's servicemen and women. It strengthens our national security and promotes national leadership on the global arena.
Folks, we got 10 news about the fourth stimulus check, Social Security benefits, SSI and SSDI. Here's the most important part that you need to know. Now, the Senate Republicans have actually slashed programs like Social Security for a long time. And what this means is that data has been released on Social Security. The lawmakers are pushing for immediate changes to be made, and these changes will negatively impact millions of seniors that receive Social Security or SSI checks. For instance, Republican John Thune slashed such programs would be a solution to the national debt. He wants to cut out Social Security and stop stimulus. Bloomberg News reports that even the senators said threatening a default would be catastrophic consequences for the economy and risk causing a recession. So he told reporters there has been a pretty broad bipartisan understanding that a default is not an option. He then contradicted it. Currently, the debt ceiling has started to expire in the first quarter of 2023, so House Republicans are on board with the plan. In October, Kevin McCarthy said that the parties plan to use the debt ceiling to push through Republican priorities like slashing Social Security and Medicare, while Republicans take control of the House with only a slim majority for Democrats in the Senate. Republicans have the leverage and votes to potentially force cuts to the welfare program. The party has already engaged in political brinksmanship with a debt default last year, threatening to tank the economy over the Build Back Better Act, a bill that ultimately didn't pass for separate reasons. So cuts to Social Security and Medicare will be devastating for recipients and for the country at large. Social Security is consistently the most effective program in the United States history, cuts poverty, and provides millions of people with stimulus cash. Introducing cuts at a time when people are most dependent on the stimulus money is actually a pretty bad decision. It will continue working far past typical retirement age just to afford basic needs. People are being thrown into deep economic and personal instability due to the lack of healthcare coverage. So Bernie Sanders has even been pushing Congress to expand Social Security. He said that the government could easily do more. Do so by ensuring that people with higher incomes pay their fair share. Currently, those making $147,000 paying even 12% of their yearly income to the program, and those making more pay a smaller portion. This is due to the highly regressive restructure of the Social Security tax, which stops taxing an income above a certain threshold, meaning those making more than $1 million a year stop paying to the program by the end of February. So, stimulus cash is necessary.
With gas prices, they're still dramatically higher than they were when the president came to office. We're in the middle, as everyone knows, of a recession. That's 2 quarters in a row of negative growth and 40-year high inflation. I can't think of anything the administration has failed to do to screw all this up. And look at what the American people think of their performance. It's stunningly high, the disapproval. Finally, I would say to our friend Joe Manchin, he made a terrible deal. A terrible deal.
The IRS is urging that eligible Americans take action to claim the available stimulus money. Many low-income households and families qualify to receive an extra $3,000. That is $3,000 in stimulus checks. You can be eligible for this, so just continue watching. State governors are working with Congress just to allocate the money directly towards new relief programs. Now, generous child tax credits also providing qualifying parents with up to $3,600 per child last year. And there is some good news. For families who missed out on some or all of those payments, it's not too late to file for the money. The IRS has announced that there is a new tool that can be used, but to use the tool, the eligible Americans must file by November 15th to submit their information for the funds. That message applies to parents with little to no income, who consequently do not typically have tax filing obligations. This year, however, those non-filers have an added incentive to submit their information to the government. Enhanced tax credits that were temporarily enacted through the American Rescue Plan legislation in 2021. Those include the child tax credit and the third stimulus check. It includes an enhanced child tax credit that brought the total lump sums of $3,600 per child to $3,000. Advanced monthly payments of up to $300 per child were deployed last year. The remaining sums were available by filing tax returns this year. The enhanced credit is fully refundable and made available to parents with little to no incomes for the year. According to new census data, the more generous credit helped prompt a large reduction in child poverty between 2020 and next year. So as with all the stimulus money that was created during this time, everybody, it helped to reach those who need the money the most and have been difficult to reach for the IRS. Actually, about 4 million people who were eligible for the child tax credit still had not claimed the money as a result of last year. And there are barriers that may prevent everybody who is eligible from accessing the money, including a lack of guidance from the IRS, and that's not something that many people are talking about. But here's some more information on this because it gets even more interesting. Households may soon be able to claim thousands of dollars in tax breaks and rebates if they take steps to reduce their carbon footprint. And also, eco-friendly consumers have to wait until next year to see many of these financial benefits. For instance, the Inflation Reduction Act, which President Biden signed into law, represents the largest federal investment to fight climate change, and it's also helping so many homeowners.
Yes, thank you all for your opening statements. And Secretary Riston, I wanted to ask about when we were negotiating the surface transportation reauthorization in this committee, we talked a lot about greenhouse gas performance measures, and we decided not to give the FHWA that authority. But they have now, FHWA has released a proposed rulemaking to establish a greenhouse gas emissions performance measure requiring states to set declining targets. So for our state, I guess what is your reaction to that? Have you seen that? And then what kind of measures, since we have a diffuse population, obviously our emissions are going to be a lot less, and so to improve those is going to be more difficult for us. That's the way I see it. How do you see this?
Here we go again. The law's clear. That provision's not in it. Transportation is not opposed to working toward reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. Of course we're not. We're going to do anything and everything we can, which is exactly why the flexibility that's ingrained in the formula programs are so important. To be able to flex just the carbon reduction program when the rules told us clearly that we could flex up to 50% of that bucket to a more flexible category. And we did in West Virginia. The FHWA's division offices they run the gamut with guidance on that across the country with the 52 DOTs. Some states were told they could, some states were told they couldn't. Ours was approved for 3 months while everyone else was still hearing that it couldn't be done. The greenhouse gases, the DOTs are absolutely, we're not opposed to this, but we need the flexibility to do things that'll get a result. By moving that money into a different bucket, you gave me the flexibility to take a holistic approach, to look at the overall environmental concerns and put together comprehensive plans to address them. Yes, we're going to have to use a little innovation. We're going to have to use some technology to deliver these things, absolutely. But transportation is not the worst offender in the world with greenhouse gases, and we can take care of a portion of this. Transportation is not the solution to zero greenhouse gases. It's just not true, and it's never going to be true. We can work on this. We need flexibility to do it. A firm performance measure? Absolutely not. The minute you give me a performance